Okay, welcome everybody. This is the December 14th Colonial Beach Planning Commission meeting. We'll call this meeting to order at 5:30 p.m. In attendance, we have Commissioners Mack, Christensen, Luna, Kurtz, and Thompson, with Commissioner Howell and Commissioner Hutchins unavailable this evening. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from October 12th? And if you need time to review them, just let me know.
I have one correction.
Okay. Sure.
And
Okay.
it's on page 19 of the minutes. It's the second paragraph on the bottom. It's the second sentence, and it says, "She said that they should," and that's a quote from me, and it should read, "She said, and I don't think we should be." So the sentence is kind of awkward if you don't add that "we" in there.
So can you repeat that again?
Okay, it reads, "She said that they," and it should be, "She said that we." Well, actually, my direct quote, because I listened to it over again, and she said, "I don't think we should be." And to read the whole sentence,
Okay.
and she said, "I don't think we should be messing with the zoning at this point, as we," and again, that "they" should be stricken, it should be "we." "We have not fully considered the ramification of such changes." Thank you.
So who are you referring to by there? Just to get it straight. Ms. Luna said that changing the form was not needed or even asked for by applicants who had come their way.
Who had come by way of the zoning office,
Okay,
because they had just reported that there had been none. So, just to make it accurate to what was said.
Any other changes that one has noted?
no.
Mr. Thompson? Nope. Okay. Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Mark in favor. Okay, we will now open the public comment on non-public hearing related planning commission matters. I see no one in the audience to comment. Did we have anything emailed in?
No, sir.
We did not. Okay, we are both going to open and close it at 5:33 p.m. Probably the quickest public comment session we've ever had. We have no public hearings for this evening. Next, we have old business. Number 7, zoning text amendment 23-08, Article 8, General Commercial C1 District Town Initiative. The request is to consider modifying the permitted and conditionally permitted land uses within Article 8, General Commercial C1 District of the Colonial Beach Zoning Ordinance. Mr. Dooley, if you will read us in on that.
Yes, thank you, Chair Mack and members of the commission. Zoning text amendment 2308 is a town-initiated request to update the permitted and conditionally permitted land uses in the C1 district zone. This item was referred to the Planning Commission for the Town Council meeting of October 18th, 2023. At the previous Planning Commission meeting of November 9th, 2023, staff presented proposed revisions to the permitted and conditionally permitted land uses identified in sections 8-1 permitted uses and 8-2 conditionally permitted conditional use permit required in Article 8 of the Colonial Beach zoning ordinance. During the meeting, the commission appeared to generally support the initial changes recommended by staff. However, the commission did provide the following direction. To retain pawn shops as a conditionally permitted use rather than changing it to a permitted use in the C1 district zone. Also to consider changing theaters from a conditionally permitted use to a permitted use if the maximum occupancy of a theater does not exceed 7 people. Otherwise, a conditional use permit should be required. This is consistent with how theaters are treated in the resort commercial district. And lastly, to remove the vehicular major service establishments as a permitted use to a conditionally permitted use in the C1 district zone. Based on this feedback, staff has made the directed revisions as shown in your current draft revision to Article 8 as presented in your packets. It should also be noted that during the November 9th Planning Commission meeting, staff recommended that the commission consider moving car washes from a permitted use to a conditionally permitted use because of the potential for adverse noise, traffic, circulation, lighting, and hours of operation that could potentially impact surrounding properties without mitigation measures. If the commission is supportive of the change, the definition of a service establishment in Article 20 with definitions in the Colonial Beach zoning ordinance would also need to be amended to specifically delete car washes as a type of service establishment. This is because staff is proposing to change service establishments from a conditionally permitted land use to a permitted land use in the C1 district zone. Staff believes the proposed revisions to Article 8 will improve its effectiveness to manage a variety of different land uses in the C1 district zone to promote economic development while also balancing the need to protect the public's health, safety, and welfare. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission identify any remaining changes it believes appropriate to Article 8 and direct staff to advertise on text amendment 2308 for public hearing at the next regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting of January 11th, 2024. That concludes my overview and presentation. Happy to answer any questions of the Commission. It's under definitions in Article 20.
Okay, so it's not part of this.
It would be part of the definitions change would be part of the zoning text amendment that you're doing.
Okay,
Because we would have to eliminate, it's in, like I said, it's in Article 20.
okay,
So it's not here.
okay, it's not here. That's why I was like, what?
Correct. It's
Where is it?
what I-
That's right.
Correct, and what I did in the staff report is I extracted the definition of, from Article 20, and I've made that change showing the deletion of car washes in the context of the definitions in the zoning code.
Okay, that's fine.
Seeing as how that's a minor amendment in the zoning code, do we need to do anything formal in order to enact that change?
No, other than to give staff feedback, if you're supportive of doing that, and we can include that in the public hearing notice, to include that.
Any other questions? You look like you had a question.
Oh, well, just in general, I don't want to jump ahead, but just looking at the permitted uses and wanting to know if we have a definition for commercial accessory structures. And I saw under development standards a sort of a description of, I'm sorry, not development standards. That I think there was a discussion of not only commercial accessory structures, but building structures. So I'm just wondering what they are and how we distinguish between the two,
Between building structures and,
and commercial structures,
Commercial accessory.
accessory structures.
I would have to look back in the definition section in 20 to see how it's actually defined. Give me a moment to see if I can find.
And that leads to my ultimate question of, is any of that dwelling units, like accessory dwelling units or accessory dwelling structures in this?
So what the definition in Article 20 says, an accessory structure or accessory building is, and I'm quoting here, "a subordinate structure or building customarily incidental to, detached, and located upon the same lot occupied by the main structure or building, including but not limited to swimming pools, sheds, and garages. Any structure attached to the main building or within 10 feet of the main building shall be considered part of the main building and does not constitute an accessory structure or accessory building. Accessory structures not to exceed 200 square feet for purposes of floodplain protection requirements." So that's how
Okay,
that's.
so none of them
actually
are dwelling or residential.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And one last question. It says under item Q, outdoor storage, and then it refers to the zoning, to appendix A of the zoning ordinance. And I have looked for that, and I can't find it. So I was wondering if you could help direct me to appendix A that describes what the requirements are under that.
I'm sorry, Commissioner, but
It's
I'm
item
not
number
following along
Q.
here. You said you're referring to section Q?
It's under permitted uses, items Q, item Q, outdoor storage of merchandise.
Item 20. I don't know where you're getting Q from.
20.
I see it's 20, I see a 28 as a self-storage warehouse.
Well,
Outdoor
mine
storage
has
of merchandise.
letters, I'm sorry, not numbers.
Yeah, which one are you looking at?
20.
But what I'm referring to is outdoor
Oh, there's,
storage.
okay, I see outdoor storage, yes,
Okay. And-
that's
and-
renumbered 20 on the colored
All right.
sheet that
And
I.
I just have in front of me what you sent to us, so I didn't look at the newer thing that we just got, but.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm trying to
It's
follow
okay.
along.
But I really just tried to understand what the requirements are contained in appendix A,
Of the town code.
yeah, of the town code, because I would like to see what those requirements are. And I recall that we struck appendix A in relation to the PUD and several other things, and I didn't know if it was expunged altogether.
I'm not sure
You see,
I don't
item
know if
A,
we have an appendix.
appendix A is only saying that there's zoning. I think that's why we had a discussion at some point.
Looks like it's a town code. The municipal code.
Yes, the municipal code.
Okay, and I don't have the municipal code with me tonight, I just have a zoning code, so I'm sorry, I can't quote what that appendix A is. Maybe you can look online.
Thank you. I would
Just have to
really
look
like to
online.
see that.
Yeah, if you could pull that up, that'd be great.
Because I've searched for that more than once.
That's what it looks like too, reading it.
Appendix A, so I don't know what's with
It's suggesting the whole zoning ordinance is appendix. A.
Yes,
It-
the entire zone.
Okay, yes, it's referring, appendix A is the zoning ordinance,
Itself,
which is
In
part of the
its entirety.
municipal code as an appendix A.
okay.
Yes,
So in that thought, I'm going to interrupt you for just a second here
Okay.
because I have a circular reference warning going on in my head here. Article 8 is Article 8 of the zoning ordinance, is that correct?
that's correct.
And it is referring to the zoning ordinance itself within Article 8, is that correct? By way of referring to Appendix A.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think it's a good catch. It does look like circular logic.
A
I
12
think you could
references
delete-
zoning regulations.
Now, the fact that it refers back to 812, I don't have a problem with, because it refers back specifically to a particular section of the zoning ordinance. But when it references Appendix A, which according to the town court code is the zoning ordinance,
It's referring to, when it refers back to 8-12, it's referring back to the same zoning ordinance, which refers to screening regulations.
which is the
In
same
Article
zoning
8.
ordinance that this
Yeah.
is.
I think what I would suggest to the commission is that we delete
I would scratch,
the portion that starts with which is contained in Appendix A
Yeah.
of Colonial Town Code.
Because there really aren't, in appendix A, there aren't really requirements like specifications, you know what I'm saying?
I know what they tried to do, looking at this, and they tried to make internal reference to go to page, it should say just go to section 8-12, and it doesn't say that. It's a long-winded way of saying it, and it is confusing.
I seem to recall that references to Appendix A have come up before, and they're basically left over from amendments that have been made in the past, and the notation has been moved around, and Appendix A,
Keeps them popping up.
it just keeps
It does.
popping up.
It's just a ghost.
From old stuff.
It also needs a period at the end of the sentence.
Yeah.
All the
Yes,
reasons.
I got it. Yeah, I think we're all on the same page.
It also needs a period of the word met.
Yes.
Thank
Yeah, what I would do is I would keep, so it would say outdoor storage or merchandise, an outdoor display of merchandise, provided that the outdoor storage and or display of is ancillary to the use permitted by right, and provided that the requirements of section 8-12 of the zoning ordinance, and then delete, which is contained within Appendix A of the Colonial Beach Town Code, that section be deleted and then retain or met.
Yes.
Just a period.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Good catch, thank you.
I did have another question. So a marina is a permitted use, but a boathouse is not a permitted use. And I was wondering what the differences are. I mean, do marinas typically have boathouses? And if that's true, wouldn't we want to move that up as well into permitted?
Unless you're considering a boathouse a shelter on a private pier. We would need to know what the definition of a boathouse is.
Let me look to see if we have that. Okay, a boathouse is defined as a, quote, covered structure built on pilings or any other method above tidal waters and used for the purpose of storing watercraft. That's how it's defined. So it says, again, a covered structure built on pilings or any other method above tidal waters and used for the purpose of storing watercraft. So it's not intended for, as I'm interpreting this, it's not intended for living quarters, it's more for storage.
Right, so I would, in order to reference this to marinas, as Commissioner Luna has done, I would simply reference you to the Colonial Beach Yacht Center and its covered slips, but does not be considered boathouses by that definition.
Okay, here's Stefan, I found a definition for marina.
Okay.
Let's look at this one. Marinas, it says, quote, any establishment located on a navigable waterway which provides for compensation, boat slips or dock space, and which may include in connection therewith dry boat storage, boat and motor servicing and repairs, the sale of marine fuels and lubricants, marina supplies and accessories, boat and motor sales or rental, and accessory restaurant or refreshment facilities and sanitary facilities.
Okay, and it doesn't reference anything about covered slips, boathouses, etc.
It doesn't, other than I think there's an indirect reference when it says that for compensation, boat slips or dock space may include in connection with dry boat storage.
Right.
It's sort of an indirect reference to it, but
So I think the
explicitly
easiest
say it.
I think the easiest way around that is if the intent of the conditional use permit section having boathouses in it, and this is kind of half question, half suggestion. If the intent for boathouses is to prevent structures being built on private piers, then it would be easily remedied by maybe putting on here, not including marinas.
Mhm.
But if that's not the intent, then maybe it should just be stricken altogether. I don't know. Because I think in order to build any kind of a structure on here, you have to also get approval of,
You can need both the state.
it's not
Someone
DEQ,
else.
but it's somebody associated with water.
Yeah, the
It depends
DMRC,
on
the
whether
DMRC.
it's in Virginia waters or Maryland waters where you have to go. to do
Right,
something,
But it's
yes.
still somebody that's in charge of building
The
stuff
Army
over
Corps
the
of
water
Engineers is
on the
also
Maryland
involved.
side, right?
Yeah.
But on the Virginia side, I think it's the,
It's DMRC, and then the Corps also will address as Council Liaison Sullivan said, also the Corps of Engineers is on the.
so if it's covered elsewhere, maybe we just strike it unless
Chairman,
council looks like you've got something you'd like to say.
Well, not about that, but you can continue with that, but I'll say something.
You had a question?
my only thought as to why it might be in there is, for example, there's a pretty large, if it's still standing, boathouse at Stanford's Old Marina, at the Boathouse Marina.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering if the difference between a marina where the skyline is not obliterated, but there are boats on the water or on lifts, is different from building a boathouse that may be 30, 40 feet tall.
Like a
Lots
dry
of you.
storage rack
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Somebody could theoretically build a private boathouse that wasn't in a marina, and it may be originally put on in the code, I'm guessing, so as a way of trying to protect the aesthetics, that for piers and private residential areas are not within a marina as such.
And based on that, I think it is the intent, then you might want to say boathouses excluding marinas, but leave it on the conditional
Conditional
use
side.
list, yeah.
So I'm really curious as to what encouraged you. to
It's a very important point. It is a, it's just a drafting thing. If you go back to 20 before, under permitted uses, you would suggest they're adding a period after are met.
Mhm.
That would be the only period in the whole thing. It's not a sentence.
Gotcha.
It's a-
Then strike it.
Right.
Wow, that was a much smaller thing than I
Yeah,
thought.
30 is a point.
I
Point
thought you were going to wax poetic on boathouses.
So you're saying that unrelated to a marina, someone could, in C1, build a boathouse?
Apparently.
That's what I'm thinking is why it's there.
And just the other question I had, are the marinas C1? All the marinas?
Yes, I believe it is.
That's what, I don't have the zoning map in front of me, but.
That's my recollection, is
Yeah.
it's C1.
You have something to say?
I'm just gonna say, if I were looking to build a boathouse, I would interpret this to mean, if I build a boathouse outside of a marina, then I would need to have a conditional use permit. Otherwise, if I have a marina, I can build a boathouse. That's how I would interpret it, just from what it says right now, but I don't object to including language saying excluding marinas.
Yeah, I'm just looking for clarifying language. I mean, we've done so much lately in all of our other stuff to try to clarify things and make it easier for people to not have to second guess.
Consistency.
That I just think that adds to the consistency of what we've been doing.
Reasonable.
And the other thing that I wanted to do was for marinas, if they want to build a boathouse, you know, they've already got the marina and they don't have to get a permit for that. And it makes it easier for them.
Well, they will need permits, but.
Right, but I'm saying
not a
but
conditional
not a
use.
conditional use permit, if that's what you're suggesting.
Right.
Much easier process
Not just
for them.
Right.
Yeah, just to simplify things for them.
and again, my only point, just to reiterate, that our marinas are distributed within residential districts. And if you don't see any problem with the marina adding a 3 or 4 foot boathouse to their existing waterscape, then I would say you don't need a conditional use permit. But if you think that might be an impact on the neighboring properties, then you might want to consider it a conditional use.
Well, thinking of the marinas that we have and where they are, the ones that have the kind of property available that would facilitate a boathouse, if you will, which basically is what you're referencing is a multi-story dry boat storage facility.
Could be dry boat, it could just be a covered slip.
Well,
The one that I would definitely call, they definitely call the one with the boathouse marina, boathouse.
well, yes, absolutely.
That covered part where you get, it's a house in which boats are kept and they could be on the water or they could be lifted.
You know, one thing I recall from previously looking at this several years back is that because it is, that the marinas are commercial districts, that there's no way that if someone wanted to come in and put in a dollar store in one of the marinas, that they would be able to do that. And so there was concern about looking at the zoning there to protect those areas, to keep them marine focused.
I thought at one point that we had created a marina kind of zoning. Do you recall anything about that, Don, that kind of distinguished the marinas from other C1?
Let me see. Yeah, there's Article 5 that's codified that says, Article 5 is titled Marine Commercial District. I'm sorry, Maritime Commercial District, MC. It does allow for, I'm looking for commercial types of uses. It does allow restaurants, art craft, photography studios, hotel, motels, live work units. So that's sort of the extent of commercial type of things. It also obviously includes marinas.
Is that what the land is zoned where marinas are? I know they're carved out little pieces.
I would really feel more comfortable looking at the zoning map to make sure where it's at was, pardon? Spencer's telling me that it's all zone C1, that there's not an MC. I don't remember seeing on the map, but
I recall it.
Don't remember.
We
I
can
just
pull it
don't
up.
have
I mean, we
it.
can pull the zoning map up here right now.
yeah, we can do that.
So if they are all in the C1 district, would it behoove us to put the marinas specifically in the marine commercial district? Or, I mean, I don't want to chop us up into a whole bunch of different chunks, but so the blue at the bottom where
It had been
the yacht
advised to
marinas.
us before to do just that, because of the concern that other types of commercial uses could occur that maybe were not in keeping with the neighborhood.
So I see a few that look like there probably are, the blue sections that you're looking at?
It does, yes, it does list all the marina areas as C1.
Yeah. So it would be,
But it's not an exclusive group.
pardon?
It's not an exclusive group. It's lumped in with all of the C1.
Correct,
Yes, that's correct.
That's kind of the
Instead of
point.
those
Should it be
being zoned
separate?
yeah.
marine commercial, they're just all commercial.
Yeah,
Yeah, because there's multiple
Yes.
marines right there.
Yeah. yeah, because we do have, we're looking at the map, we do have obviously commercial in the marina, in fundamentally the marina area, like, for example, Ice House, you have the Eugene's that are commercial as well as on the point as well. There's some restaurants down there.
It's a
as well.
hotel.
Correct.
Yeah, the motel is Nightingale's, which is also marina, and they're,
No, Wakefield.
well, Wakefield is currently zoned residential.
Is what?
Zoned residential, if you
Oh,
look
is
back.
it? I can't.
It is,
I don't know if this-
it's in a residential zone.
Okay.
Oh, you don't have that. Oh,
You don't have a fancy
Yeah,
description.
we have a word, I don't know what that URL is, how he got there.
Yeah,
That's you can't access that, that's on my end.
But you
But
could, you could
we're working on
sit here and look at this one. This is much clearer, I mean, it's very clear.
I think the one I'm looking at, the staff believes that it's, the C1 zone does provide more flexibility in use. Retaining it as a C1 zone, and marinas are already included in the C1 zone, the
Yeah.
same as it was for the maritime commercial. So I don't think I don't really see any change out of that unless going back full circle, if the commission wants to provide more stricter requirements
Well, I
for
guess more protections might,
protection for
yeah, to keep
for
it
boathouses and
marine,
marinas or
focused,
not.
and maritime focused.
Yeah,
And then the question becomes, does it behoove us to make that adaptation? And that would mean, changing, that would mean does, for the commercial district, for the C1 district, would marinas come out of the C1 district and move to the marine commercial
Yeah.
district?
we don't have an MC zone. It's C1.
But we have one in,
We have one, it's codified in the ordinance,
Correct.
just on the land use map.
Yeah, I realize it would involve, more dialogue with the marina
Right.
owners and to, get the input from the community. But if that was something that people were concerned about, uses there that are not necessarily in keeping with the neighborhood and are not marine focused and or service oriented to folks that are at the marina.
I think that, and I understand your point's well taken. I guess what I'm thinking is that based on when the council gave this task to the commission staff to relook at the uses, I don't think they were going
Oh, yeah, but
into a
I think our
broader
purview is
discussion.
kind of a little bit larger than just that, looking at ways that zoning, and this has been our effort to improve the zoning. And so it's all in keeping with that.
I would argue that probably some of that discussion probably is worthy of getting, if it's not there or it's not, the town wants to make changes, is to starting that discussion of comprehensive plan. To think about what vision the town wants, and then make the zoning.
I'm not sure that it's not in there, but I hear what you're saying. I think a more deliberate, process that was more, I think thought out and looked at
Yeah.
all points of view.
Because what I'm concerned about is that if we are trying to give those particular areas that have the marinas in there more of a marine focus, I think that's a much broader discussion that we need to have, because I would see that could potentially erode some of the permitted uses already that are in the C1 zone. as it
Well,
exists.
I think that we heard what those uses were, and it included commercial and, restaurants.
Yeah, and
food
those,
establishments.
but it also
But
doesn't.
yeah, I want to just put that out there.
But on that note,
There's no
with restaurants being included in it, I would
Yeah.
think, you're saying that the marine commercial also included restaurants.
Exactly,
Okay,
that's
yeah.
what,
So
that's,
Yeah, so there's overlap.
yeah,
there's overlap in that, and I think that those are things that are necessary to retain in a
Yeah.
marine commercial if we decided to go that way.
absolutely.
Because,
I want to encourage.
right, many marinas that I've been to in many places have both lodging and food and a pool and, all of those different kinds of things are all integrated into the same place.
Yeah, I don't have the background and know why it was removed out of there. I think that it makes sense to have those areas as kind of a special area.
Yeah,
But we do have existing uses to consider that are there as well and I don't know off the top of my head that making changes to that, to the marina areas probably warrants discussion about whether or not we want to change that zoning.
yeah, I think it might even be in the comp plan, but it's been a while since I
Certainly,
looked at it.
certainly a further discussion.
Yeah.
One thought that comes to mind is that, I know marinas in general are struggling. Some of their marinas are ancient. And if somebody came along and offered to buy for example, the yacht center is on the market for sale, and they wanted to put a shopping center there instead of a marina, is that within our overall plan of what we would want?
That's my point, exactly.
Yeah, but
What is it that we as a community want to see happen?
And I can tell you that I am familiar with marinas that do have commercial shopping and stuff in there.
Marina having
and,
commercial, I'm
But
talking about.
instead of a marina,
Yeah, I'm talking about instead of a marina.
Yeah.
coming in and buying the space
Oh,
and then foregoing the
yeah.
marina.
Getting rid of
Oh, I see.
That's what we
Yeah.
were warned
Yeah.
about several years back, be careful, because you could lose it.
So, but I think that's a thing for further discussion,
Put on our work
going
plan.
forward. Right.
Oh, I think it's definitely worth it for
Right,
discussion.
certainly a thing to consider in the future. It very well maybe I haven't read that page document a long time.
But after that discussion, then do you take off that caveat for boathouses and
Potentially,
leave it as,
I think for now,
conditional use?
I think for now,
Yeah,
with
okay.
everything in here, I think leaving that caveat in there is appropriate.
Well, especially if we hear that they
The
got
except
three-story.
marinas?
Because if we were to replace marinas into a marine commercial zone, they would have their own portions. And one would think that they would come out of the commercial district and then we could strike that from that going forward. But otherwise. You found
So
your-
I have access to GIS, I just didn't know how you got that to pop up.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a back of the house map, so.
But I am open if everybody feels that putting the caveat on boathouses to accept marinas out of that is unnecessary. It was just an idea that I had. I am not married to it.
I guess kind of based on the discussion, to me, it sounded like we would just want to leave it boathouses.
Just leave it as is.
Yeah.
I'm open for that.
Because there are other things we want to try and address.
Gotcha. Okay. Anyone have any objection to just leaving it as boathouses with no caveat?
No objection.
Okay. Shall we move on to the next page, which is page 8-3, the little number that I see in it, which starts with buses and railroad stations. And I'm looking at the corrected copy that you handed out earlier that's got the color coded corrections in it. So if, just making sure.
I did have a question on development standards. Looking at item 8.3, item number 1, full frontage improvements required curb, gutter, and sidewalk.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering, is that a requirement?
That's a requirement throughout the zoning code for the different
Um,
districts.
And is it 100% unilaterally collected? And
Well, the improvements are supposed to be done as part of the development or redevelopment of the property that doesn't have curb gutters and sidewalks.
so are people that are getting approved, are they paying for curb and gutter and sidewalk?
It's the developer's responsibility to provide.
Yeah, I realize it's their responsibility, but are they paying?
Are they paying? They're supposed to be developing it. There's no in lieu of fee. Excuse me, there's not an in lieu of fee.
And no impact fee that are set aside for
Not at
curb and
this-
gutter,
Not at this time.
but they're not paying it then?
Because they're supposed to be putting the improvements in.
It's part of
rather
the
than
plan that
doing
they
it.
get approved.
Pardon?
It's part of the plan that they get approved.
That's correct.
And when they don't install it,
They have no choice. They're supposed to install it. It's a requirement.
but we're
They would
seeing,
have to go through the BZA to get
so we have talked about, for conditional use permits and especially in the commercial district where, under this requirement for, even for a renovation, they would be required to do the curb gutter and sidewalk. And how odd it would look to have one commercial area with a curb and gutter and sidewalk and 2 adjacent businesses not.
It does, and what I only can tell you is that when you have existing neighborhoods that don't already have those types of improvements, it can take decades to do. So you have incremental progress that can occur. There might be capital improvement projects through grants or other types of funding that might go in and put in sections of whatever the infrastructure is, such as curb, gutter, sidewalk, in the future. But that's typically how the public improvements occur. There are communities that I've worked in that do have in lieu of fees that you pay. The problem with those is that by the time you get a long enough stretch of road to be able to make a project sort of worthwhile to do, it usually ends up costing more money than you have in the lieu of fee. So it's better to get the improvement at the time of development rather than waiting for it. And so you have those gaps that occur. It makes more economic sense to do that because the cost of concrete and cement and labor keeps going up, and you have one fixed fee that the developer might pay for, but in the end of the day, it usually comes back costing the community more money.
So if an applicant came forward today, that they would be expected to include curb, gutter, and sidewalk in their plan. And if they were then to move forward and build that, then there's always the concern about the drainage from those properties. And so the sidewalks and curb and gutter have to be done holistically for an entire area where drainage is going to flow in the right direction.
Agree 100%, and those are our topics. In fact, we're actually discussing in-house right now to try to create some standard plans and standard cross sections for those types of improvements. But I agree with you 100%.
Just my last point is that I've seen other jurisdictions create an impact fee, and then they can set that aside, even though I know the cost 10 years down the road is going to be higher, but at least we're collecting money for these things as time goes on.
Part of this is an FYI, part of doing before you can start collecting impact fees, that you have to do a study to determine what the needs are and what the costs are. And then you can appropriate an impact fee. You can't just say, hey, we're going to charge another $500 onto your permit. There has to be a nexus between the cost and incremental costs over the future through doing this study.
One last question in relation to that, the stormwater resiliency plan that's being developed now. I assume that it'll include things like that, so that we could maybe use that as a, as a study.
As this point, well,
Yeah.
it becomes a stepping stone to get there.
Okay, thank you.
May I ask Dawn a question?
Sure.
This is vague memory, it was before Dawn, it was before Powell, probably before most of you all were here. But at one point in time, I believe we were collecting such a fee for residential infill lot development. And that at some point in time, it was decided that we wouldn't collect that fee anymore. And we don't know what happened to the money that was there. Maybe you could check into that.
I would be happy to. I'm not aware of it, so this is my
I do
first
recall
awareness.
that, and I think that was at the time when Mayor Blunt was in office. And yeah, especially for the infill.
It was
the
residential
numbered streets,
infill, and they were
as I
having to
recall.
pay a fee, and somehow or the other, we stopped collecting that for some reason.
I'll look into that. I'd be curious. I'm not aware of that we were doing that.
Robin will probably be able to help point you in the right direction.
I can check with
But if,
finance
you know,
director and
If
see
there's a
if she
way for
knows
us to
about it.
start collecting, resources for that,
I'm
would be great.
You're preaching to the choir, because public improvements need to occur as development occurs. That's sort of normal and customary in every community I'm a part of.
I guess the one thing that conflicts though, if public improvements need to happen as redevelopment occurs, I don't think we should collect a fee then. It should be on the developer to complete the development standards.
With the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So we're not starting an impact fee.
well, yeah, if they do the sidewalk, then there would be
So
an impact.
don't give them the option of an impact fee, make them do the sidewalks.
That's
Okay.
I'm speaking with myself, that's my preference, because I
Yeah.
think that's how you get the improvements.
Yes.
When you collect impact fees, by the time you actually get to do a project, it usually ends up costing more, and those impact fees don't cover the real cost.
So I think,
Because it could be 20 years.
I think we're running down two different roads here. The impact fee is reference to how that renovation or that development impacts the properties around them. Whereas, an in lieu of fee is one that allows them to not do the particular sidewalks and gutters or the thing that we're talking about. So they would still, and for the impact fee, they would still be required to do the sidewalks and gutters, but the impact fee is to hopefully mitigate.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Right, to mitigate the drainage affected by doing those things.
Let me correct myself. Impact fee, that's good. In lieu of fee, no thanks.
Gotcha. All right. I agree with that.
I think we're all in sync.
So where does the gutter go? If they actually.
Sounds like a very existential question.
And,
This-
it's gonna be a massive job undertaking.
We're really going to get a bunny trail tonight, but it's a much larger discussion that I don't have a real sharp answer for you. It's part of the stormwater management plan. Again, I think that's going to be as a starting point, but there really needs to be a comprehensive evaluation of stormwater through the town, developing a master plan for drainage throughout the entire town, and that's a huge lift to do. It takes time, but it's necessary to do.
It's actually kind of a work in progress.
It is. We're taking steps to do it, but it will take time. It's
The GIS mapping was part of that process.
Oh, yeah.
part of that too is putting there's a lot of V ditches that are used to collect water. One of the challenges is that where we have problems sometimes is within existing areas that are developed. So you have to put infrastructure in because you have no way of conveying the water through lots already developed. And that takes money and time to figure out ways that the water can be conveyed into into a system to collect and properly drain water and prevent soil erosion and other problems that cause from stormwater.
Well, to prevent the digression into further infrastructure conversation, which I think we could go on about for weeks and months on end, we made it through to buses and railroad stations, and going now that then we kind of jump down to developmental standards.
The Chairman, just to be clear, that the council's directive was to stick within sections 8-1 and 8-2.
Okay, good. So it looks here like we just added and to what is now number 20, parking lots paid to park and valet.
Correct.
We brought back pawn shops from the dead there.
We removed appendix A reference.
We removed appendix A reference earlier. We added M to the word establishments before striking it out, I think, in service establishments. We added the, with a maximum permitted occupancy of over 70 persons to theaters under the conditional use.
And then under 70 persons be permitted use.
Yep.
Or 70 or under.
And then what would be 25, we have vehicle major service establishments.
Yes.
And that's to reference like body work, major maintenance, heavy lift stuff.
Correct.
Versus-
Vice Chair Howard brought that up at the prior meeting.
Yeah, versus fueling stations, oil changes.
Yes, they have light service repair work.
Veterinary hospitals stayed the same. We struck what was 28, watchmen or caretakers with living quarters who are employed by the business.
Permitted uses.
Yeah, and then we maintained wayside stands and farmers markets under 27 as conditional use. The one land use we haven't talked about is the car wash, or at least I'm not familiar with. Yeah, I
To talk about tonight.
saw that earlier. Where are we here? Looks like I'm looking at that.
Car washes have, so the commission knows, I left car washes as a permitted use
Mhm.
in there with the notation that the commission may consider moving this into the conditional use permit category.
Mhm.
And again, the purpose for doing that is that car washes, there's typically concerns about noise, lighting, hours of operation, traffic circulation flow. I've seen car washes in numerous codes that do require conditional use permits. Maybe it's not needed here, but from staff's perspective, I think it's appropriate to have it as a conditional use.
One of the concerns was environmental hazards and the runoff from that.
Yeah.
And we see it, at any car wash. And so to put it in our commercial area, which is primarily, the front here on the river, it's just not a good proximity to do that.
So I would not oppose moving it to conditional use for a couple of different reasons. One, yes, I think there's plenty of environmental factors that need to be observed. It doesn't necessarily fit within the downtown district that we were thinking of. And we already have a car wash. So the impact, I think, to that level of business would be very small. The likelihood of us getting another car wash, I think, is extremely limited. And the only way that this would affect the current car wash is if they decided to expand their footprint, which I don't think they have the area to be able to do that.
They could
I don't know.
renovate, but
They
they
could
just
renovate.
couldn't expand.
Correct. So I don't have a problem moving it to conditional.
I've seen folks in town too operate like car
Like a
washes
car wash.
independently.
Yeah.
So, you know, to make that a conditional use, you know, so that it's in the right location and, I think is important as well.
How do you feel about it, Bob?
I don't really feel strongly. I feel a little ignorant because probably the state laws are different in Virginia. In California, you can't have a drop of water go outside a car wash. It has to be
It's all
all recycled. Right. So that objection, I don't understand. But there are a whole long list of possibilities that could go in. So I guess I'm ambivalent on which way you go, but I'm not against moving it to conditional.
I think it should be conditional.
You think it should be conditional? Okay. Do we have a motion to move? Do we need to make a motion?
No, you don't have to make a
All right,
motion.
so everybody agrees that we should move,
Yeah.
or doesn't have a problem with moving car washes to conditional? Okay. So let's do that.
And that would include modifying the definition or in Article 20.
Yes, all the things that
Remove
go
car
along with
washes from service establishments.
that. Okay. Does anyone see any other changes that, or have any other questions or discussions about what we're looking at here?
Have we discussed, did I miss it? Have we discussed the changes to the definition? Some, the deposition chapter, the one on book.
Oh, bookstores?
Bookstores were modified from a conditional use to a permitted use with the exception of adult bookstores. It's listed in the changes under number 4.
But yes, I know in this particular article, but in the Article 20, did we change that also?
Let me go back and look. I don't remember that being an issue. It's because it's defined under adult. It has adult bookstore.
Do we have just
We
bookstores?
don't have bookstores. We just specifically, just adult bookstores. So if we take, and that's why I remember now I did this way. I took out, I called out bookstore and then I added, but not adult bookstores because there's specific definition for that type of bookstore. Adult bookstore is states and definitions, any establishment which has a substantial or significant portion of its stock in trade, books, magazines, or other periodicals, which excludes juveniles in accordance with 18.2-391 of the Code of Virginia as amended.
So since we have that in there.
It's also under adult business too, is adult bookstores.
Okay. And I'm gonna reference this to your left. Do you see a need for us to define bookstores?
I think I'm just.
We clearly defined adult
If it doesn't meet that definition, then
It
it would be
is
a bookstore.
defined in the code.
bookstores.
Bookstores defined.
Oh, okay,
No, it's.
Any establishment which has as a substantial or significant portion of its stock in trade in books, magazines, or other periodicals.
Yeah, that's under adult bookstores.
No, that's
No,
what it's not.
So, I'm sorry.
It is the.
Correct, you're-
in the code.
I'm sorry, you're absolutely correct.
Okay.
It's been a while since I looked back.
So we do have
Sorry,
both
I got word
definitions in there.
search.
No, thank you. You're much faster than I am.
Okay, so we do have both definitions in there. Good.
And I'm just curious, I mean, I don't want to make it into a big discussion, but if we don't allow adult bookstores in the commercial zone, where do we, if we ever allow them?
I think we don't.
And if we don't, not that I would ever
Well, they
use
can
an adult
apply.
bookstore, but I mean, it just seems like they should.
Well,
I think we can apply for a conditional use permit.
Well, they're not in the conditional use area.
That's
either.
right. that's right.
So I think the way that would end up happening, if someone wanted to put in an adult bookstore, is we didn't have tattoo parlors.
We prohibited tattoo
Right.
parlors, yeah.
We did not, and so they were not permitted and they were not conditional. And in order for that tattoo parlor to create itself, they had to petition this town to allow them to have a tattoo parlor. And
We
we
were
had
part of
to,
that vote.
yeah, we had to change the town code. I wasn't.
Yeah.
You guys were. We had to change the town code in order, so we could leave it out just entirely. And then if somebody wanted to put in an adult bookstore, they would have to petition the town to change the town code to allow them to put in an adult bookstore.
Makes sense. Okay,
And
thank you.
then if the town goes,
A bit more difficult than a CUP.
yes,
Yeah, a little bit.
correct. And then if the town goes, yay, adult bookstores, then they change it. And if they go, I don't think so, then.
Well, I suspect there might be something in between saying, here's the regulations and,
Correct.
what would be approved.
Right, which is what the tattoo parlor did too, how they showed how they were governed by all these state medical regulations, et cetera, et cetera. Right, sure.
I was confirming with the contract, I think we're fine the way it's currently
So just
drafted.
not have
With, it just eliminated out of there.
Yep.
Somebody comes to the town and says, I want to open up a adult bookstore, we can address it at that time.
Okay. Any other questions? Changes after dinner minutes? I love the fact that go-kart tracks are in here. I would love for somebody to put in a go-kart track. That would be hilarious.
Not downtown.
Not in the downtown area, but there's bound to be somewhere else that wants it.
I'll make a motion to recommend authorization that staff advertises for a public hearing on the proposed revisions to Article 8 under zoning text amendment 23-08 for the next regularly scheduled planning commission meeting on January 11th, 2023.
Hey, Commissioner Bailey, I'm sorry to that. That would also include modifying the definition in Article 20 with for service use to eliminate car washes from that definition. Part of the motion.
And the proposed revisions to Article 20.
Second the motion.
Since I think we've had substantial discussion, unless there's further discussion, we'll take a vote. I think, let's go ahead and do a roll call vote just to make sure that we're covering all of our bases correctly. We'll start on this side. Commissioner Kurtz?
Aye.
Aye. And to follow that with the comment of, man, you were prepared for that motion. Hey, you know, he was prepared enough to read it.
Exactly.
So good for him. Good on you. That currently is the last thing we have. We have nothing under new business. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do we have a second? All in favor? Yes. What is it? 6:33 p.m.
This has never happened.
I know, right? And we actually started on time tonight, too. Although you will notice that I screwed up on this tape recorder. I did not start recording immediately. I thought I started.